So what you've just been looking at are the nighttime sequences of our Habitrail Village. And what do we have in it? We have Robo Hamsters. Robo is short for the Roborovski Hamster, which is the smallest and fastest of all hamster species. And we're looking at a little female here. There are 3 females in this Habitrail Village. Eventually we're going to see which of the 3 does not get along with the other 2. And I'll be giving that one away, so we're going to end up with ultimately 2 hamsters in the system. Now, they have the choice of several habitats. There are 4 habitats shown in this village, and they're all by Habitrail, and it's the Loft, the Studio, the Dwarf Hamster habitat, and the Habitrail Cristal. So seeing them all together in the system, you can compare them size-wise, and we're watching and learning which areas the hamsters prefer. And again, these are Robo Hamsters, so they are the smallest. And some of these cages aren't great for them, and I'll explain why as we watch. Because hamsters are nocturnal, they're not going to be active during the day. This sequence is being filmed at 5:30 in the morning. And what we're looking at is the Cristal cage, which is where we're feeding and watering them. That way they're drawn out from the other cages to converge here, and we can see them take food and drink water and make sure that they're getting what they need. It's also where one of the exercise wheels is that they seem to use the most. And again, their activity is at night. So in the daytime, you're not going to be able to watch your hamsters too much because all they're doing is sleeping. Unless one sleeps in plain view, you're not going to notice it. But I'll share with you how they're using the habitats, the way they've been made by Habitrail, and which ones they prefer. These wheels are lubricated with olive oil so that they are quiet. This is being kept in our living room, and these hamsters are for my wife. So they're not in a bedroom where we would be bothered by their activity at night. So you need to think about that when you're setting up your hamster habitat. And because they're tiny, and because they're lightning fast, it's probably not a great idea to have hamsters like this for little people. You have to have patience, and even taming them takes a long time. I've been hand feeding them myself, and one came right up, took the food out of my fingers, and then of course bit me. So you need to be ready for a nibble and not react. So don't flick it away, don't make any sudden movements, because if you scare or startle your hamster, then you'll have to start that confidence training all over again. And if you notice, they're carrying around food in their pouches. So they'll go to the food dishes, fill up, and then they'll run away and eat their food somewhere else. Now what you're looking at here on the right is the Habitrail Ovo Dwarf habitat for dwarf hamsters. So what you're looking at is the Cristal habitat, and this little guy is filling up on seeds, and it seems like he's eating really fast, but he's not. Watch the pouches grow on the sides of her head. And then if you see that big nut right in front, just keep an eye on it, and in a second she's going to pull that in and run away. So they are filling their pouches, and they're harvesting as they would in the wild, and then they take it and they store or they hoard their food in hidden away places, just as they would in the wild. So there goes that big nut, and now she's off. Now we're looking at the tubes and the components of the dwarf designed habitat. There are other species of dwarf hamster, but these are the robos and the ones that we decided to go with. You don't need to handle them all the time. In fact, there's some discussion about whether or not they actually do better if you're not handling them. So if you have a nice habitat where they can pick their sleeping quarters and establish their territories, they actually may do much better not being handled by their owners. So you just keep their cages clean, keep the food and water fresh, and you just have hamsters to observe. That's not saying that you can't handle them, but if you do, you probably want to be pretty close to the floor because they're nearsighted. Because they can only see things a few inches from their face, they may have no sense of space. So if you held one in your hand, for example, it would just leap out, not realizing that it's 4 or 5 feet off the ground and could be injured. So if you're going to handle these, you probably want to cup your hands around them and sit pretty close to the ground in case they jump off so that they're not injured. And we're looking close. Where is this hamster getting the food that it's eating? Well, from its pouches. Now these are the normal size Habitrail tubes that it's sitting in, so you can really see there's a lot of extra space. And as you continue watching, I want you to notice that some of the tubes are really small, and that's difficult for the hamsters. Now that's a National Geographic chew house that we will put in. We have things inside the cages right now for them to chew on. This little grass hut is also completely edible. It's composed of alfalfa and other materials that are digestible for hamsters. So they're just cute ways to give them something to chew on and provide more habitation choices for them inside the cages. Now if you look at these setups, some people have concerns about the square inches, for example. What we're looking at in the foreground is the Habitrail Ovo Loft setup. That is the largest one, and it has 324 square inches of floor space in it. So because these Robo Hamsters don't necessarily climb up, we're not going to count the little nesting sites and the carry pod and things like that in the square inches, but when you add this whole system together, it's around 749.46 square inches of surface area, and that's on the ground level. So this is great space for two of the Robo Hamsters, and remember, we're going to give away the third eventually when we figure out which one is not getting along with the others. If they all get along, we'll have to expand the system, of course. Now these are the upper pods of the Robo habitat, or the dwarf hamster habitat, and so far they're not really making a lot of use of those upper pods, and you're going to see in a minute how hard it is for them to climb up in there. Now you're looking at the Ovo Studio here, and the tubes for the Ovo Studio that rise above it are actually too large for Robo Hamsters. They can't climb up because they can't push their bodies against the tube to get traction to climb. So this upper level for the Ovo Studio is not going to be something that Robo Hamster is going to be able to occupy. And again, this little log with holes in it is also composed completely of edible materials, so the hamsters can chew away on it and ultimately they can digest the components, and it's a full service tool there. The other thing is, now here's a 5-inch exercise ball. Based on what I've read, I'm going to decide probably against using this ball to exercise the Robo Hamsters. They really are nearsighted, they hear very well, and they see and they smell very well. But there's some discussion that they may just be completely panicked when they're inside those balls as they roll around trying to get back to their familiar habitat where the scent is familiar and where they feel safe and secure. So I may not be using an exercise ball. Now again, all of the robos that we have in here are females. They were all purchased together from the same breeder, and they're all from the same litter. So right now, they are all getting along. Now these drinkers, I'm not a big fan of the Habitrail Ovo style drinker system, and if you look in the basin here, you'll see why, and that's because they drip down frequently. And it was completely dry, and when the hamster went and started to lick at the bottom to get a drink, a whole bunch of water came out all over the hamster and then collected here in the basin. So, and I've wiped it out here so it's nice and clean, but I'm not a big fan of this design of drinker, and I think that Habitrail needs to take another look at it. I understand design-wise it's compatible with that spherical look of all those cages, but because it does leak, I'm going to empty these and only use the old spout style, which has the 2 ball bearings in it. And of course, here's another of the robos that's in the end there where it was leaking before. And today this is where she's actually sleeping, so we definitely want these spaces dry. Now look at the effort that this Robo Hamster has to exert to get up through this tube. These tubes are designed for dwarf hamsters, but I can't imagine a hamster being even slightly larger than this one making it through these tubes. So this is highly specialized, and only the smallest hamsters are going to be able to fit through it. Now she has been setting up her bedding area here in this upper pod, which is also an escape or travel pod that you're supposed to be able to disconnect and carry your hamster with you. We won't be using it for that. They're going to stay stationary, but she is the only one of the 3 who goes up into this upper level. The other thing is the style of bedding that you choose. I'm going to show you the packages later, which show the bedding that we are using in these Habitrails. We also have the National Geographic bedding, which actually is kind of hard. And not that that's bad for the hamsters, but if you're trying to have peace and quiet at night, soft bedding makes all the difference. They burrow in and they kick the bedding around, particularly in the Habitrail Loft, which is where a lot of them are choosing to sleep underneath that maze, they call it. And they are kicking the bedding around all the time, and when the bedding flicks against the plastic sides, that is a noise that you hear from quite a distance. So this white bedding, which again we'll show you the package later, but it's soft and quiet, so it's composed of paper material. So think about the bedding choices that you're going to make, because they're going to be active through the night, and during the daytime they'll just be sleeping. These Robo Hamsters max out at like 3 inches in length, so they're very tiny throughout their lives. These are adults that you're looking at. This is not a baby hamster. And this is the food that we're offering them. We have National Geographic Hamster and Gerbil Entree on the right, and then we have the VitaSmart Complete Nutrition on the left. The one on the left actually has nuts and stuff in it. The one on the right has some oats and everything, and it looks like they prefer the oats. There are even bits of leaves and twigs in there too, so it's pretty interesting. And this is the kind of forage that they would find when they go out during times of harvest in their natural environment. This is why hamsters spend so much time running. In the real world, they would be running out of their den and scampering as fast as they could at night, usually early evening and early morning, and they would be harvesting and recovering and caching all of their resources for the nighttime, and of course large resource stashes so that they could get through winter in times when there is not seed available. And this is the bedding. Notice it says odor stop. If you can stick your head in your hamster cage and get it close to the bedding and sniff everything, if you can smell it, things are dirty and you need to clean it. There are a lot of recommendations that I have for components and stuff that you might want to stock up on. One would be extra linkages for that, so the connectors for the different tubes. Get some extra 90s. Here's a 180, what they call a U-turn, and that way you can connect your cages to each other in creative ways. Now keep in mind though that the hamsters are going to get accustomed to the way the cages are set up and the way all of the food is placed and the water's placed and where their bedding is. So even when you clean a cage, you might think you want to change, you want to alter things around, but remember that that's a stressor for your hamster. They want things to stay the same because they want to know where everything is. They also want to know where they can run and hide. And if you're constantly changing it up, then they're adapting and getting into new territory, which again is a stressor, just like when they were originally moved into your tanks when you bought or adopted your pets in the first place. Here's the whole setup layout. You can see a little Robo Hamster down there in that left-hand corner, right next to that pink connector. So this is the way we've got it all set. We have it in the living room, and that's so that we can constantly see what they're doing and that we're aware of any potential problems. And here we are in the daytime, and of course, what's the hamster doing? Sleeping. The fact that they sleep throughout the day would be very frustrating if this were a pet for a child. If you've looked at my other videos, and you may have seen our gerbil habitat. Now, gerbils are active through the day, and they are easily handled by children, and kids interact with them, and they come running to you. Robo hamsters are actually very reclusive and are, again, very active early morning and early evening on into the nighttime. So if you're looking for a pet to interact with and hold and walk around with, I would say that dwarf hamsters, in particular the robo hamsters, would not be a great choice for you. They're perfectly fine on their own in the habitats that you set up, and it might just be enough for you to observe and enjoy them. Here again is the top of the Habitrail Ovo Studio. There is no robo that's going to make it to the top of that. So that maze at the very top is basically not going to be used at all. And we calculated the square footage of space for them, square inches, based on the bottom units alone. Now, another thing I want you to notice is that this is a cage by Habitrail. It's a live catch animal cage, and it is the smallest one they make. If you have a hamster escape, you're going to want to have a cage ready to go to collect it. If you have more than one hamster in your collection, you're not going to be able to leave their cages open and hope that that hamster finds its way back at night. And again, if you look at the bases of these Habitrail units, a Robo Hamster is going to be able to get back in there if they've fallen out. And because they're so lightning fast, they could take off and hide. So get a cage like this one, and then you want to put it on the ground, on the floor, right next to where your cages are. Hamsters are going to follow their own scent trail back to where they originated. They have excellent smell, they have excellent hearing, and it's likely that they're going to come right back to their cages at night. So if you set this up on the floor and put their normal food in it on both sides of the trigger plate, your hamster is going to wander in there because they're not wild, they are pet hamsters, and it's going to go right in and trip that, and then you're going to have them in a live catch cage. Then you can just take this thing, put it right inside, for example, the Habitrail Loft, turn it upside down, and let the two ends open and leave it upside down and let the hamster walk out on its own. You want to make sure it's not traumatized. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing the Habitrail systems, and I hope you enjoy your small pets. Thanks for watching as always.